Welcome to the shadow frequency, where the veil between this world and the next grows thin, and the things that whisper in the dark are given voice. From the cryptic candlelit studios, deep in the Indiana forests, your host, Matt Wilson, and his spectral producer, Juniper Ravenwood, unearth the forbidden, the forgotten, and the fearsome. So, still your heart, dim the light, and listen closely. For once you tune into the shadow frequency, you may never tune out.
Okay, let's see what the haunted file cabinet has for us tonight. You'd think after all this time it would stop feeling weird to reach into this thing, but nope.
Yeah.
Still feels like I'm about to lose a finger to another dimension. Well, what do we got here? An old tide chart, a water-stained postcard with no return address, and, oh, absolutely not a clump of seaweed in a manila folder.
That's never a good sign.
Sarah, come below.
Whoa, nope. Did you hear that?
Yeah, and I'd just like to record the show. That thing started talking the second you pulled out the seaweed. Oh, that haunted seaweed.
I do not like that. That sounded way too wet.
It did sound wet, and I don't like that we can use that as a description.
Okay, I'm just going to keep digging here before that thing starts singing anybody onto the rocks.
Yeah, good idea.
Here we go, got it.
Well, what's tonight's file?
Episode 294, Mermaids and Sirens, Real Threats of the Deep or Mythical Mirage.
Oh, that's a good one. Ancient sea legends, beautiful voices in the dark, sailors vanishing into black water, and one huge question.
Are mermaids and sirens just folklore born from fear, loneliness, and the mysteries of the ocean? Or are those stories echoes of something real lurking beneath the waves?
Tonight, we dive into the legends, the history, the sightings, and the dangerous line between myth and menace.
So lock the cabin door, keep your eyes on the horizon, and whatever you do,
don't follow the singing. This is episode 294, Mermaids and Sirens, Real Threats of the Deep or Mythical Mirage.
You are tuned to the shadow frequency, where every whisper tells a story from beyond the veil. Hosted by Matt Wilson, produced by Juniper Ravenwood, with Chris Beach. The darkness continues.
there are some legends that feel old the moment you hear them, like they were already waiting in the dark before language ever caught up. Tonight's file drifts in on old salt wind and moonlit water. It's a story of voices heard where no one should be singing, of figures glimpsed in the surf just long enough to unsettle the soul, and of sailors who swore the sea was watching them back. For thousands of years, people have told of mermaids and sirens, beautiful, deadly, impossible beings tied to longing, doom, temptation, and the deep. Some were said to call men to their deaths. Some appeared as omens just before storms or wrecks. Some were remembered not as creatures, but as encounters that left witnesses changed forever. The old stories are persistent, and the ocean is very good at keeping them alive. Ancient Greek sirens were originally described as dangerous hybrid beings tied to irresistible song, while mermaid traditions developed across many cultures over time into the fish-tailed figure most people picture today.
And that's what makes this one so good. Because on the surface, people think they already know the story. Mermaid, siren, same thing, right?
Right.
Beautiful woman, ocean, bad news. But once you start digging into the old versions, the whole thing gets stranger.
Sure does.
These aren't just fairy tale creatures floating around in pretty paintings. They're warnings. They're symbols. They're things sailors carried with them into black water and empty horizons.
Exactly, and the deeper you go, the murkier it gets, because some of these stories are ancient myth, some are folklore, and some are real reports from people who swore they saw something rise from the sea. Maybe what they saw was never fully there, or maybe it was just there long enough to become legend. Either way, tonight, we're following the song Out Over the Water. Matt, let's open the file.
right, well, hopefully we can keep that haunted CB radio at bay. Thing's not even plugged in or hooked to an antenna. I don't get it. Well, first off, thank you to Juniper for digging into the file cabinet and dragging out tonight's strange case. And this one feels less like opening a folder and more like prying open an old sea chest that's still wet with salt. Because mermaids and sirens aren't just monsters in a storybook. They're part of one of humanity's oldest fears, the idea that something out there, in the dark over open water, knows how to call your name. When most people hear the word siren, they picture what modern pulp culture has trained them to picture. A beautiful woman with a fishtail, resting on a rock, singing to sailors while waves crash around her. But the earliest sirens weren't that at all. In ancient Greek traditions, sirens were tied to doom, temptation, and song. And in art, they were commonly shown as bird women, part female, part avian, not fish-tailed sea maidens. Homer's Odyssey made them unforgettable, beings whose voices were so irresistible that passing sailors were drawn toward destruction. Later, writers and artists expanded the image, but the ancient core was about fatal lure, not romance. And that's a wonderfully creepy detail, because it changes the shape of the fear immediately. The original terror wasn't just beauty in the water, it was a voice, knowledge, seduction through sound, something calling from beyond sight. There's a reason that lands so hard. You can fight a storm, you can try to outrow a current, but a voice that gets inside your head, a song that makes you want to step closer to the edge, that's a different kind of danger. Meanwhile, the mermaid tradition takes shape along another current entirely. Long before the modern fairy tale version, the ancient Near East had stories of water-linked divine beings, and one of the names that often surfaces in this conversation is Atargatis, a Syrian goddess associated with fertility, protection, and fish symbolism. Over time, later traditions helped connect sacred female figures, fish imagery, and the sea itself into forms that feel eerily close to the mermaid image we know now. She's not a simple one-to-one first mermaid in modern sense, but she is one of those deep roots that shows how old the human urge is to imagine the water in human form. And once those roots spread, they spread everywhere. Europe gives us mermaids as omens and shoreline apparitions. In British ballads, the sight of a mermaid could mean disaster, rough weather, or a wreck waiting just over the horizon. Elsewhere, sea women appear as tempters, mourners, guardians, or warnings. Different cultures told the stories differently, but the emotional pattern is hauntingly similar. The sea is too large, too alive, too unpredictable to remain faceless. So people gave it a face, and often that face was beautiful enough to draw you closer before it ruined you. That may be the part of the legend that grabs me the most. These beings are almost never just random monsters. They're tied to longing, to temptation, to loneliness. Think about the people most vulnerable to such visions in the old stories. Sailors weeks or months from home, cut off from everything familiar, exhausted, staring at shifting water under moonlight. The ocean becomes a stage for whatever your mind is already carrying. Desire, grief, fear, memory. And then somewhere out there, the waves lift in just the right way, and suddenly the dark looks back. That's why sirens and mermaids endure. They don't just threaten the body, they reach for the mind. A siren doesn't have to leap aboard your ship with claws out. She only has to sing. A mermaid doesn't always drag you under. Sometimes she only needs to be seen. Just a glimpse. A pale face in the surf. Hair moving where there should only be foam, a hand on black water, and then the witness is never entirely free of it again. And over time, those two figures, the bird woman of Fatal Song and the fish-tailed woman of the deep, begin to blur together. Medieval and later storytelling helped merge symbols, images, and older myths until the lines softened. The bird features faded. The tale took over. The song remained. Doom remained. Beauty remained. and suddenly the modern siren is really a braided thing, stitched together from separate old fears into one unforgettable icon. So when we talk about mermaids and sirens tonight, we're not opening one neat file, we're opening a whole family of stories: myth, warning, omen, seduction, maritime dread. And in every version, the same dark idea hums underneath. There may be something in the water that understands exactly what humans want to hear. And once a legend learns your weakness, it doesn't have to chase you. It only has to wait offshore.
That is exactly why the ocean at night feels like a place you should never answer back.
In the second half, we'll move from myth into sightings, explorers, sailors, distant shapes in the surfs, and the question of whether people really saw something out there. Juniper, take us into the break.
So far tonight, we've drifted through the oldest layers of the legend, the deadly songs, the shifting shapes, and the way the sea kept borrowing a human face. And I have a feeling a lot of listeners are sitting there thinking the same thing I am. Even if you know it's a legend, why does it still feel so unsettling? Maybe it's because the ocean already does half the work for the story. And we're not done yet. Coming up, Matt gets into the sightings, the sailor lore, and that uneasy stretch where folklore and witness stories start brushing up against each other. But first, I want to hand it over to Chris.
Thanks, Juniper. Hey, if you're enjoying the show, one of the biggest things you can do for us is follow and subscribe wherever you're listening right now. That helps the podcast tremendously with visibility. Be sure to find us on Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, Rumble, and across all the major podcast platforms. And don't forget our home base at shadowfrequencypodcast.com, where you'll find full episodes, the companion blog, merch in the store, show notes, and ways to reach out by email or voice message. You can even buy us a coffee to help keep things going. All right, let's hand it back over to Juniper.
All right, time to fire up the spectral cosmic message materializer. Flipping the switches now. Let's watch the dials twitch and the tubes glow. Oh, here's something sliding loose from the static like a note in a bottle from the other side.
Message retrieved from the void.
Let's unfold this little phantom dispatch and see what our listener had to say. Says Lorna here from Nevada. I usually listen to the shadow frequency late in the evening when I'm drifting off to sleep. There's something relaxing about hearing mysterious stories when everything's quiet for the night. I listen on Pandora, and I have to say the cryptid episodes are my absolute favorite. Bigfoot, strange creatures in the woods, those always pull me right in. Thanks for all the great storytelling. Your show has definitely become part of my nightly routine. Lorna in Nevada, drifting off into the shadows. Lorna, first off, that's a perfect sign-off. Drifting off into the shadows sounds like it should be stitched onto a velvet pillow in a haunted lighthouse somewhere. And I love the show has become part of your nightly routine out there in Nevada. There's something very shadow frequency about easing into the dark with a mystery humming in the background. And also, I'm with you. Cryptid stories have a special way of getting their claws into you. Bigfoot, strange beings in the woods, things glimpse just beyond the tree line. Those are always good for a chill. Thanks so much for writing in, Lorna. We really do love hearing where people listen, how they found the show, and which episodes keep halting them after the lights go out. And if you want to send us your own note from the shadows, you can email us shadowpodcast@protonmail.com. We may read it on an upcoming episode. All right, Matt, back to you for the second half.
You are tuned to the shadow frequency, where every whisper tells a story from beyond the veil. The darkness continues.
Thanks, Juniper, and thanks to Lorna in Nevada. I love that image, drifting off to sleep with cryptids in the background. That feels very on brand around here. Now let's push this boat back out into darker water, because once you get past the oldest myths, you run straight into something just as fascinating. People over the centuries who insisted they had actually seen mermaids. And this is where the story gets wonderfully strange, because the reports themselves are real as documents. Sailors, travelers, and explorers did record encounters with beings they believed were mermaid-like. One of the most famous examples is Christopher Columbus, who wrote of seeing mermaids in 1493 near the Caribbean. though he remarked they were not as beautiful as expected. That little detail is almost eerie in itself. It sounds like a disappointed witness comparing reality to a legend he already carried in his head. Modern marine historians point to that account as the first written description of manatees in North America, which tells you a lot about how expectation can shape what people think they're seeing on the water. But even knowing that, I don't think the old reports lose their power. In some ways, they get creepier, because the witnesses may not have been making things up. They may have truly seen a distant figure rise and sink in the swell. They may have caught a face-like shape in gray water at dawn. They may have heard a sound that carried strangely over the sea and attached it to the nearest thing their imagination could bear. Marine mammals, shifting light, exhaustion, fog, loneliness, those don't erase the legend. They help explain how the legend keeps being born again. Smithsonian Ocean notes that mermaid sightings persisted in cultures already saturated with mermaid imagery, and animals like manatees and dugongs can, under the right conditions, be misread as human-like forms. That's the one place I'll let a little skepticism into the room tonight. Not to flatten the story, but to sharpen it. Because the most likely explanation for many historical mermaid sightings is not an undiscovered race of aquatic humanoids. It's misidentification shaped by distance, weather, fatigue, and belief. If someone already lives in a world full of stories about sea women, it doesn't take much for a glimpse in rough water to become a certainty. And once that certainty gets told and retold, memory polishes it until the thing in the waves has a face, a voice, and intention. But here's where I think the legend still earns its place in the dark. Even if no literal mermaid was ever there, what the witness experienced may have been real in another sense. Fear was real. Awe was real. That sudden electric conviction that the sea holds intelligence just beyond your understanding, that was real. Anybody who has stood near black water at night knows the feeling. The ocean does not feel empty. It feels inhabited, even when you know better. And that brings us back to why these stories never stay dead. Sirens and mermaids are not just monsters, they're emotional machinery. They personify temptation, doom, desire, distance, and the lethal beauty of nature. A siren is the voice that says, "Come closer," when you absolutely should not. A mermaid is the face on the unknown, beautiful enough to invite trust, alien enough to make trust dangerous. That's why even scientific ages keep dragging them back into view. The facts can change, the ships can become steel, the maps can fill in, and people will still tell stories about songs over the water. There's also something almost tragic about the endurance of these legends. Sailors were isolated. Explorers were frightened. Whole communities lived with the sea as both provider and executioner. Of course they imagined it as alive. Of course they peered into the fog and saw omens. Of course a dangerous coast became the home of a voice. These creatures endure because they gather human feelings into one shape and let us stare back at them from a safe distance. Or safer anyway. So where do I land on it? No hard evidence supports literal mermaids or sirens living somewhere beneath the waves, waiting to rise up on moonlit rocks. The old reports don't hold up as proof of aquatic humanoids, but that doesn't reduce the legend to nothing. It may actually make it more interesting, because what survives here is not zoology, it's psychology, it's folklore. It's humanity trying to speak to the oldest part of itself. The part that still looks at the sea and senses that it could swallow us without effort and without remorse. And maybe that's the final truth of Mermaids and Sirens. The ocean is vast, beautiful, indifferent, and deadly. So we gave it a song. We gave it eyes. We gave it a mouth that could call us by name. Not because a creature had to be there, but because something in us needed one to be. Maybe nobody ever met a mermaid in the surf, but plenty of people met the part of themselves that was willing to believe one was waiting there.
That is somehow both poetic and a terrible thing to think about before bedtime.
That's our specialty. Tonight's file may end as Mythical Mirage, but it leaves behind the same old chill. Over dark water, even a story can sound like a voice. Juniper, take us home.
Tonight, we followed one of the oldest songs in human storytelling, from the bird women of ancient Greek myth to the fish-tailed mermaids of later folklore, from deadly voices on the rocks to sailors squinting into fog and swearing they saw something looking back. Whether they were real threats from the deep or a mythical mirage born from fear and longing, one thing is clear: these legends still know how to haunt us. Thanks for joining us for another trip into the strange. If you want to share your own thoughts, theories, or eerie experiences, you can send us an email at shadowpodcast@protonmail.com and check out our website, shadowfrequencypodcast.com. And of course, come back next time when we open another strange case and see what's waiting in the dark. Matt, you want to say goodnight?
Good night, everybody. Stay out of the deep water.
And keep your ears open for anything singing through the static. Good night from the Shadow Frequency.
This episode was conjured with a solemn vow to explore the unexplained while remaining bound to the truths that have been unearthed. All interpretations are speculative and offered only for your enlightenment and your entertainment.